Welcome to Glow and Tell, a podcast about all things beauty, wellness, and business, sponsored by Artemis, the brand empowering the unsung heroes of beauty and wellness. Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Glow and Tell. My name is Delaney Allen Mills. I am the VP of Brand at Artemis, and I am really excited to be joined today by Brando Baldan of the Baldan Group in Italy. We're so excited to have you, Brando, on today to talk about building a beauty tech empire, which is something that our listeners will soon find out, but that I know you and your family have done, really owning, developing, and pushing for the leading manufacturer in Europe of beauty devices and beauty technology. So if you want to start off by just telling us a little bit about your own personal background, as well as the story of your family's business, the work that you do, the products and services that you offer. If you want to just take us away with that introduction, we can take it from there.
Of course. First of all, thank you very much for having me. This is exciting. Where can I start? So yeah, as you said, it's a family story. My father, when he was about 18 years old, was just out of high school, and he started helping out his father, so my grandfather, in retail, in selling some hair products. And while he was doing that, he realized that basically the advanced aesthetics industry was starting to become a thing. Therefore, he was looking towards the US, actually, what was happening there initially with tanning lamps, and saw an opportunity there. So what he did, he started to see if there was a market in Italy for that, buying some used machines in the US, refurbishing them, and then obviously reselling them. The thing was a bit of a snowball. It got bigger and bigger to the point where it was bigger than my grandfather's business, and he had to drop it all. He had to drop it and focus on advanced aesthetics, which were actually booming in Italy in that period. We're talking mid-80s, more or less, 85, 86. At that point, it was pretty much focused on technologies. Initially, we were distributing. Obviously, he didn't have the capital or the resources anyways to manufacture himself. Therefore, there were a lot of trading with Asia. There could be both South Korea or China, depending on the technology. Each country has better expertise in different kind of technologies. Then with the time, he obviously built, the company grew, and he acquired several strategical companies, and he enlarged, let's say, enlarged the offer of the company, and we started offering also cosmetic products. So we could complement the offer totally and become a one-stop shop for the Italian beauty salons. And then with the time, our know-how on the technologies obviously increased a lot, his know-how at least, and his team. And then eventually we started to manufacture ourselves. So most of our machines are made in Italy, Tuscany to be precise. And at that point, we started on a mission of global expansion, starting from Europe, obviously, and more countries. Now we are more or less present in 25 countries. He also diverted the focus, not diverted, but let's say expanded the focus towards not only beauty salons, but pharmacies. In Italy, at least, it's very popular for pharmacy to offer services because, we call it the peel of the white, how do you say it?
The lab coat.
Of the doctor's outfit, let's say. The lab coat, exactly, sorry. So he started approaching the pharmacies, which was a success. We are by far in Italy the biggest suppliers of beauty machines also to pharmacies, and then eventually as well doctor with more advanced technologies and so on. So this is a brief story of how things went down, let's say, with my father. I'm helping him now with the global expansion on top of some R&D because I've been always a bit of a geek and in love with technology and science generally. So yeah, it's pretty much the rough story of of our company.
Amazing. It's such an amazing story coming from your grandfather in salons. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that original onset of the company, its inception, and how the company has grown and expanded over the years, where it's taken you. And if you can just walk us through that step by step from when your grandfather started his first business in beauty in the hair salon space and how that has now expanded into a global beauty tech empire.
Of course. So my grandfather actually, to take a step backwards, was already in beauty. So he was a hairdresser to begin with. He became the most famous hairdresser in Milan in the 70s, 80s. Therefore, he started to have his own range of products. So that was the first approach towards the beauty industry, even though in a slightly different segment. So my father started working for my grandfather, who was a hairdresser to begin with.
Mm.
He went to Milan. He was not from Milan. He went to Milan from Padua, which is in Veneto, close to Venice, looking for basically the Italian version of the American dream in Milan. He was literally working the land to begin with, started to work for a hairdresser, learning the job, and then eventually became a hairdresser himself. And fast forward a few years, and he became the most famous hairdresser that we had in Italy at the time. So obviously expanded the business towards not only cutting hair, but also providing high quality hair products to his customers. And not only then after his customer, he decided that he could actually expand his business towards a more B2B kind of business and help other salons offering like great hair products. So that was the first approach to the work world of my father, obviously. So he finished high school, started to understand a bit better what was all about his father's job, and helped in selling this product. So he was a core salesman, my father, and he still
Mm.
is. He's still on the front line of sales. So he manages all the team, but what he loves to do is sales. Give an example, and here I'm really fasting forward quite a lot. When he came to open the UK market and help me, I was back then fresh out of uni. I was 21, and I decided that I wanted to open the UK market, which was going to be effectively our first direct market outside of Italy.
Mm. Mm.
He took me on a week cold calls, but not cold calls, like literally knocking doors in London, showing me how the job was done. He was already 50 something back then, and he
Right.
had already achieved what he had to achieve, but he loved so profoundly sales and wanted to
Mm.
make sure that I understood what it was all about, that he put himself again as an agent on the front line. So going back to the first steps of my father, as I mentioned, he started to sell these hair products for my grandfather. And by visiting some hair salons, you know how hair and beauty has always been very connected. At times you have
Mhm.
hybrids that they offer both hair, but also like more advanced treatment.
Yeah.
I guess at that point, when he started to understand better and better how no, sorry, how hairdressers were working, and the start of the beginning of this interest towards like more advanced technologies, he realized that there was no one in Italy really
Mhm.
supplying that yet, not even manufacturing really. And therefore, his curiosity eventually brought him to an understanding of a great opportunity that was to be the first Italian company to supply aesthetic machines, devices of any kind, starting from laser hair removal to more advanced procedures like HIFU or our tissue 2, which is our bestseller right now.
Mhm.
So he pretty much focused on the Italian market because there was so much to do. He was starting literally from zero. And he did a great job because we got to a point where I would say we have almost 50% of the market share when it comes to beauty salons in Italy,
That's
at least. Like we're
amazing.
indiscussingly the leader in Italy when it comes to beauty. And but then his expansion always went the way he wanted to approach expansion wasn't necessarily to new countries, but
Mhm.
to new segments. So
Mhm.
it started to question if it was only the beauty salons that could be his target market, if and why not trying to educate a new market like the one of pharmacies to explain them because legally they could use some of our machines. So it was a hard job of education and explanation of education, not just from a technical standpoint. Obviously, they have to
Right.
understand what the machines and the technologies were doing, but also from a more commercial point of view. Consider that in Italy, pharmacies are not like in the US. We don't really have chains, it's just starting now, but it's more like one family runs since generation the same pharmacy. So as a consequence of that, they tend to be very conservative about what they do and what is
Sure.
supposed to be their job. But it worked well. It worked well. He created this concept of pharma spa, and now we have more than 1,000 pharmacies around Italy that decided to open their room for beauty treatments. So yeah, the expansion for him was always in Italy, but different segments. Afterwards, also with my push, he started to approach, and obviously not only my push, but like a level of technology that was constantly improving, and we finally got to a medical level. So when we were ready, he started to focus a bit more also on the medical side of things. But it was always a bit scared for some reason to approach new markets.
Mm.
And that's where I, let's say, walked into the equation and took the job, took the task, let's say. And yeah, so at that point, starting from the UK, we proved the model. It was working well in the UK, despite obviously some adjustment that you need to do in every market because every culture is slightly different. The UK perhaps is a very face focused country when it comes to beauty. So we had to strategically invest more into face machines, even though T-Shape 2, again, our bestseller is still the second bestseller in the UK as well. We had to adjust the strategy. But proven the model of expansion in the UK, then we started replicating it all over Europe and not only. Now we're operating in over 25 countries. And it's pretty much the focus of the company to consolidate the international expansion. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely, and more. It's such an amazing story again, and really just understanding a bit more too about the character of your father and him being such just a natural, tried and true, passionate salesman, and that really driving him, and him also seeing that opportunity where Italy was a blue ocean, as we would refer to it, as this potential, this opportunity where the market was missing this beauty technology, to your point, and even bringing in that concept of the pharma spa and really solving for a problem that was existing that didn't have a lot of saturation at that time. To your point, you were really the first trailblazers and innovators to be bringing this forward in the Italian market and in the European market in general. So I think it's just, yeah, it's so fascinating. I think really an incredibly inspiring story for our entrepreneurs that are listening in as well, just to what can really be done when you find that sort of problem and then come to it with that innovation, with that groundbreaking solution, and really just put your nose to the grindstone on it to continue to drive results. A question on your global expansion. I know you said that it was when you jumped in really and had discussed this with your father as far as pushing into the global market. What was it that was that tipping point for him and for the team? I know it is a family business. So, what was that tipping point that allowed you to finally move into the global market and really take that leap to approach the UK?
So the reason why I wanted to move to the UK was initially unrelated to my job. Actually, I wasn't working at all. I just needed a change from Milan. I love Milan. It's a beautiful city, but having grown there 0 to 21, I felt like I needed some new inputs, some new
Mm-hmm.
challenges. Therefore, but I didn't want to be that spoiled son that just asked for stuff. So I wanted to try to create a win situation. So I
Mm-hmm.
started to analyze a bit the beauty market in the UK and just to realize that it was bigger than the Italian one. And from a lot of point of views, better and easier, better access to
Mm-hmm.
credit, less regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And the format that they had was quite similar to the Italian one. Like
Mm-hmm.
the typical beauty business was very similar, if not a bit more advanced and familiar with the kind of products that we're selling. So putting down my points, I managed to convince him that it was a good idea to to give it a try. And therefore, at that point, he gave me 1 year to prove that it was a good idea, and luckily that worked out very well. The first challenge I would say in the UK was brand awareness,
Mm-hmm.
but that we overcame thanks to two things that were, I think, the key success factors that also applied to Italy to begin with. One might sound normal, but the quality of the machines, the results, the European market flooded with low quality Chinese machines. And don't get me wrong, Chinese doesn't mean low quality, not anymore. That maybe applied
Right.
20 years ago. Now you go to China for cheap expertise. So definitely the fact that the machine could speak for itself helped
Mhm.
a lot, but also a commercial strategy that was a bit of a turning point also in Italy for my father. He he started he obviously he never being a good salesman, he never accepted no as an answer, and he was looking for a way to avoid. So he was always thinking of what could be the objection that a client could make towards my selling points, and how do I completely erase any doubt, any kind of objection that could come towards me. And what he did, and he was just in his 20s, late 20s, he invented a formula which is called financial partnership.
Mhm.
And basically, because he was so uh, sure, so confident of of his product, not only in terms of quality, but also like in terms of financials, of the profits that would bring to the clinics, he decided to take a risk and tell every clinic that was on a negotiation. Let me actually take a step back. Clinics in Italy, they buy through a lease. That happens all over the world. And usually the main concern of the clinic is, will I be making enough money to pay for my lease?
Sure.
Will, and then make a profit. So that's usually where it lies the uncertainty towards taking a machine and making an
Mm.
investment or not. So what he wanted to do is to erase the word investment. And how did he do that? Basically, he became a guarantor of every machine that he was selling to clients, meaning that
Wow.
if a beauty clinic was buying, yeah, it's pretty strong, but it's also very psychological because, yes, he said he was telling clinics that if they had a lease installment of 1,000 euros in Italy,
Mhm.
back then it was lira, but same. If they have a monthly cost that they had to make sure that they paid off for
Mhm.
that machine, so that's the investment, I would say. He would guarantee that if the machine wasn't generating enough money to pay for itself, then he would be stepping in and help the clinic.
Wow.
And that comes out of confidence. Yeah, so obviously at that point everyone had a peace of mind. I really just need to work. I don't need to stress about paying an installment, taking money from somewhere else because I'm not able to cover for that.
Mhm.
But then it was very psychological because the machines were so profitable that 99% of the clinics that decided to bring it on board never required support from us. And that's where sales really started to grow at a different pace. And this we replicated everywhere and helped us break the UK market and Spanish market and all of Europe. Because even if you're just starting and your branding is really not there, if commercially you can be so strong and it's backed as well by results and quality, then branding will be necessary, but will not be an element that, if not present, will not allow you to be successful to begin with.
Absolutely. And to your point around just proof of concept, you're speaking to breaking into the global market, coming first to the UK, creating that proof of concept that you'd already created in Italy, and then moving into new markets really confident and strong in that we can see success if we follow the formula that we have been following. And I love that you highlighted that very aggressive and very confident, to your point, financial model, because it's something that at Artemis we also employ, are these very confident and aggressive financial models where we know that the technology works, we know what it can deliver in terms of profits and revenue generated, and so we feel that confident that we do enter into these, again, more almost shocking pricing models because we feel that confident, and that's what's happening. So again, I love to see that your father was also leveraging that within the technology that you were bringing to the market. And I do want to talk about that technology a bit. If you could walk us through from the beginning of you bringing on devices to now, and maybe even looking ahead to the future, how has your product suite changed? Where did you start? How did that expand? I would love to just hear, because of course I know a lot about your product suite, but for our listeners that might not be as familiar, if you could just walk us through that timeline, that would be fantastic.
Of course, of course. We had an insane amount of products, so I might forget about a few. But as I mentioned, initially was mainly we were mainly importing products of any kind. I would say the first product that really started to make the difference was the dye laser. We were the first company to bring it to Italy, or one of the first companies to bring it to Italy, and that became our product of how can I say it was driving most of the strategy. And then we had some complementary products of different kinds, from monopolar radio frequency. At the beginning, it was very popular. Now, obviously, we got to tripolar and technology advance and so on. We started off with just a handful of products, and laser hair removal was definitely one of the most successful in that initial phase of our business. Then later on, we started, obviously, we were researching a lot. We were attending most of manufacturing exhibitions around the world, particularly in Asia. I must say, Asia really drove a lot of advancement in the industry. So from those products, then we started to move towards a bit more advanced products made in South Korea. South Korea is well known for an incredible culture of beauty, first of all,
Yeah.
of any kind, but also for really good manufacturing, really, really good manufacturing. And actually, still now, there is a product that we are not able to manufacture in Italy. We still have to import from South Korea, which is HIFU. And I would say, in terms of turning point product wise, was when we first introduced T-Shape 1.
Mm-hmm.
Again, manufactured in Korea. So we were at the end, let's say, of that distribution phase. It came right after our distribution contract with LPG. We learned so much from them, actually. We were distributing their products for almost a couple of years, and it was definitely a big inspiration. The level of attention towards quality that they had, and customer care really sculpted what our company was soon to become. So at that point with T-Shape 1, we really took the market in Italy. The machine was incredible. It brought results that never before were seen. It was a combination of radio frequency, low level laser, and a few other technologies. And that was the product that we used to kickstart all of our branches around Europe to begin with. Following that product, that had quite a long life. We were selling it for about 6 years, which in our industry, it's about the max.
That's very long.
To sell the same product for quite a long time. And then at that point, we were ready with the mindset. We were getting ready to become manufacturers. And obviously, the first idea was, okay, why don't we make T-Shape 2? Why don't we start from what was the best selling, but also best performing, giving the best results, making our clients so happy. We never had such a feedback like we did to begin with T-Shape 1. And such incredible feedback. People were in love with it. And obviously we were leveraging that a lot, and we create a bit of a, pass me the word, cult around T-Shape in Italy.
Right,
so.
right.
So people were really going mad, not only the clinics, but also the final end user, obviously. And therefore, at that point, we started a journey that lasted around 3 years of development of what it's now T-Shape 2. That took all the strength of T-Shape 1, we enhanced them, we added new strength, and we took off what was actually the limit of that machine. And that came out of an incredible teamwork. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so I didn't say my point of view when it came to what kind of frequency, what kind of laser we had to do. We had other people taking care of that, very experienced people, luckily. But for instance, my contribution towards the development of T-Shape 2 was more towards a user interface and I don't know how to call it. Basically, what happened with T-Shape 1 was that the machine was fantastic, but the results were still pretty much, let's say 30% of the result was still pretty much in the hands of the user.
They were user dependent results.
Exactly. So let's say 0 to 70 the machine gets anyways, even if the user is not really skilled. But then the last bit, which is the bit that really makes a difference, was really related to the skills of the user. And I saw in first person here in the UK, we had a client that has like multiple shops around London, and their
Hmm.
results were inconsistent, meaning that one cleaning was having incredible results, and the other cleaning a few kilometers away was
Right.
having like still good, but like uncomparable compared to those incredible results they were having in the main. That was something that was one of the flaws of the machine that I wanted to address when we had to develop the new one. And that's why we packed T-Shape 2 with a very smart software with automated protocols to reduce as much as possible the impact of the
Mm.
user on the result. So that also big chains that already have huge headaches in terms of staff turnover, they won't have to have a further additional headache
Right.
when it comes to delivering result with an asset that they purchased. So yeah, after 3 years of work, we even worked with a famous architect, an architect that helped us design the machine because for us it was important. The machine was still a part of the clean, so it takes a bit of space. So it's important that the machine looks good, not only for the client that wants to purchase it, for the cleaner that wants to purchase it,
Right.
but also for the whole experience of the end customer that walks into a room and instead of just seeing the usual like piece of metal, they would see a more aesthetically pleasant and interesting machine that would also trigger their curiosity towards the machine. So yeah, we put a lot of focus on design, but also user experience, and then obviously the science behind it that
Mm.
was extremely important. And now Tissue 2 cannot be compared to Tissue 1. Like the results you reach are by far ahead.
Absolutely. I think that you touch on so many amazing points here that are just so important when talking about how you develop in your business. You saw the success that you had from T Shape One. You decided, hey, let's go, let's manufacture this ourselves. Let's take the learnings that we have from this device in market, from what we've learned from previous partnerships that we've gone into with other manufacturers. Let's solve for these issues that have come up around predictability, around ensuring a consistent user experience. Let's generate better results. So let's talk a little bit more about T-Shape 2 because I have heard that T-Shape 2 has a bit of notoriety in Europe and that clients, rather beauty business owners, call it a slot machine. So I'm very curious in you talking a bit more about this device. What does it do? Why should clients be interested in receiving treatments? And why should beauty business owners or entrepreneurs and professionals be interested in providing T Shape 2 treatments?
Sure, of course. First thing I want to say is that we tend to not call T-Shape 2 a machine, but a multi-technological platform because we packed so much technology in one machine that it's a bit reductive to think of it as a single machine. We The idea behind T-Shape was to work with the most effective and safest technologies that were on the market. And at the same time, the philosophy behind my T-Shape, sorry, it's a combination of technologies. So in the specific case of T-Shape 2, we combine three things that are essential and that without one another, everything would fall apart. It would not make sense, basically. We use a radio frequency, a multipolar radio frequency, which obviously it's like the most well known, I would say, technology in the beauty industry worldwide. And we combine that with a cold laser called LLLT.
Mm.
It's called low level laser technique. And then the whole mechanical movement with the suction and so on. Why do we do that? We do that because what we're trying to do is not to eliminate the fat cells. Let's focus on fat because that's the main purpose of
Mhm.
T-Shape 2. Then it does much more than that, but focusing on fat, we are not trying to kill the fat cells as other technologies would do, like cryolipolysis or HIFU, for instance. What
Mm.
we're trying to do with T-Shape 2 is to empty the fat cell. Because if you kill the fat cell, then yeah, you have less count. It will give you like an effect. But then down the road, if you keep having an unhealthy lifestyle, you'll just start to accumulate fat in other areas, basically. So what we're trying to do is we want to be as holistic as possible, less invasive as possible. It's always been
Hmm.
our company mission to be non-invasive. We think we can reach so much with non-invasive technologies, and we just scratched the tip of the iceberg. If you look in the past 20 years, non-invasive technologies have started to do miracles. So the idea is that we want to empty the fat cell. And how do we do that? Usually,
Hmm.
a simple radio frequency, what it does is it creates heat that comes from within the body and melts the
Hmm.
fat. But the fat is usually always inside a cell, a membrane. If you just do that, you're you're really limited to what you can achieve. So that's why we have LLT laser walking into the equation. And what LLT laser does, it changes the permeability of the fat cell. So it's as if it was creating small holes in that membrane of the cell where the fat lies in. But these holes, they stay for seconds. Then they would just close again. So
Mm.
that's why the combination for us, it's so important. We need to act with the laser, change the permeability, at the same time, melt the fat within the cell. And thanks to those holes that we created, that will say just for split seconds, the fat would actually be able to get out of the cell. But again, if it stays there, then it will be collected again. So what we do, thanks to the mechanical movement, we drive that away into the lymphatic system of the person, and then naturally the person will get rid of the fat. So that's a bit the core philosophy behind T-shape 2. Then there's a few other technologies that we combine in order to do slightly different things, but that's the core function of T-shape 2 and allowed to provide incredible results. It's the perfect pre-wedding treatment, but not only, but also in terms of long-term and lasting results, we've seen really good data points. And yeah, in Italy it became a bit of a trend. Obviously, we marketed a lot, so that helped. The biggest celebrities in Italy have tried or still do T-shirt too, and not only for advertising purposes. Like most of people actually love it. We got to the point.
Right.
I will not mention, but we got to the point where you had politicians doing it. When we had sons of politicians that bought it for their house, they were so obsessed
Hmm.
over this. Then which I do not recommend because it still needs like a trained esthetician to use it. But yeah, so it became a bit of a phenomenon. Obviously, it's not easy to replicate a phenomenon like that all over the world, but we're trying to communicate as well as possible the success that we had in Italy and the reasons why of the success behind that. Yeah. I focused on body, but like T-Shape also, it's an amazing machine also because it's the perfect entry level. Despite being so advanced, it's at the same time the perfect entry level for clinics because you buy one
Mm.
machine, but then yeah, with one machine, you're able to have quite an extended product list, service list, because they should treat face, treat cellulites, treat fat, it treats stretch marks. It's a really powerhouse. In fact, when people recommend what kind of machine I should begin with, and maybe they're looking at something else, I always tend to drive them back to T-shape because it's just the machine that makes more sense. Buy a HIFU, fantastic, but a HIFU is going to limit you to basically two things. I love HIFU; it's an incredible technology, but aside from facelifting, reducing a bit the double chin, and some localized fat, but no one really uses it that much for the fat. That's pretty much it. You can do two things very well, but two things.
And this is something I did want to talk to you about because I do know that at Baldan Group, many of your devices are these types of multifunctional devices, what we would call, with multiple technologies built into one super system. You've spoken a little bit on this already, but could you also speak to why Baldan Group has chosen this sort of strategically as part of your product strategy? And then what the benefits and pitfalls are that beauty and business owners should be looking out for when they're looking at these types of multifunctional devices, given that we know there are a lot on the market that are not as high quality as those that are coming from Baldan Group.
Of course. So initially, we were into a different philosophy. So we were quite vertical on each technology. I'm talking over 10 years ago. But then what we realized, and the market helped us a lot in it. Our clients helped us a lot in
Mhm.
realizing this. is that the combination of technologies is always going to deliver a better result. You have bodies reacting different ways to different technologies. In fact, I would say my most successful clients, they tend to offer like a journey. So we try to understand where you're at,
Mhm.
where's the point zero, and where we want to get there. And usually to get there,
Mm.
they would not rely on one device, but they would try a combination of treatments and see how that person is reacting to one or the other. So perhaps a bit more of one technology instead of the other ones, instead of the other ones. So the combination has been extremely successful from a result standpoint. So I would say it's mainly for that. We don't want to offer the multi-platform that does everything. So those kind of machines that they have HIFU, but they also have radio frequency, but they also have that and that, because that's just putting together different technologies and that have nothing to do with each other, not necessarily at least, and
Mm.
just want to offer like a one for all solution that usually ends up being either too expensive or very low end because at the end of the day you need to make a strategically financial viable decision. So you don't want a product that costs
Mm.
100,000 OKs, otherwise you'll be very limited who can buy it. So we end up with very cheap technologies that really struggle to deliver good results. So yes, we started to combine technologies, but they're very scientifically picked and combined together. We won't offer
Mm.
two completely diametrally opposite technologies together just for the sake of having one machine doing the same, doing the different things. We combine them only when we can actually, and it's scientifically proven that we can achieve a better result. And so the technologies need to be extremely complementary. So yes, that's the reason behind, I would say, this choice.
Yeah, I love that strategic decision and choice to really be intentional with the combination. It's something that I've seen on the market. Of course, you've seen this on the market as well, where we see a lot of these all in one devices that are coming off of Alibaba or Amazon that are just 10 technologies, and you just know that the quality is really suffering there. Or to your point, you see an all in one device with all of these different technologies that's at an extremely inaccessible price point for most spa owners, medi spa owners, or just beauty business entrepreneurs that are looking to build their businesses around technology. So I love that approach that you have really taken to be intentional and only combining technologies when they will, in fact, improve the results for the end user and also, in turn, of course, improve results for the business owners and generation of that revenue. So, taking a different turn here, in talking about Baldan Group as this global empire, as this leading manufacturer of beauty technology, what is it that you really, and you've highlighted a couple of these points already, but just to synthesize, what do you attribute your successes to, and how do you maintain that growth that you've seen in these past decades?
Hmm. Not an easy question, but I'll try to answer as honestly as I can. First of all, well, every market has a different, can I say, we need to have different approaches in each
Mm-hmm.
in each different market because of cultural differences and so on. So I would say in Italy, our success was related to a few things mainly. First of all, we've always invested a lot in human capital. So we have by far the biggest sales network in Italy. Consider that just in Italy alone, we're looking at around 150 people. So
Amazing.
that was to make sure, yeah, that was to make sure that we could reach our clients as fast as possible, both to introduce a new product, but also to be there for them. So it's a combination of a strong presence that allow us to communicate very well with our client very fast. In Italy, the relationship is still pretty much one to one. We are slightly behind when it comes to digitalization. In a way, it's nice because we still value a lot
Mm-hmm.
the human interaction.
Sure.
So the clinic, yes, it usually has a strong partnership with the company and attachment to the company, but very often even more to the rep, so much that they're most of the time they're friends. So definitely our presence on field was one of our strengths. Then the commercial formulas. As I mentioned, the financial partnership earlier, there are tons of other formulas that we try to come up with in order to always find the right fit for the right person. Because if I'm sure that the technology it's good and it's the best on the market, if you're not keen on buying it, there must be something else. So I must adapt my offer to you because there must be a way where you can benefit from it, and obviously we can make a sale or eventually make a sale. So I would say that the creativity towards the commercial proposals were definitely a strength, and that applies to all over the world. Like we're not the typical company that says this is the tech, really good, this is the price, that's it. I'll make you a small discount, maybe. That's it. No, we're a bit more sophisticated than that, which
Mhm.
came with a downside because then to manage it's quite complicated because our admins they basically need to look at each client story to understand how to approach a certain situation, a problem they may have, because every client almost have a completely different because they were adapted to,
Sure.
to their situation. We're trying to reduce that a bit because with scale and volumes then it really becomes a big problem, but without losing that core commercial creativity that is common of our company. Obviously we've been always very, my father particularly, always very invested in marketing. It was for him it's almost a religion. Marketing was everything. It was important. It comes from the same reason why he wanted to have so many people on the field, because you want to be able to reach people as fast and as a good quality as possible, let's say in the right way. On one hand, he wanted the people on the field, but on the other hand, the adverts, the communication, the journalists, he wanted to be able to reach the house basically of every clinic owner in Italy. And
Right.
he definitely achieved that. Our industry, no one in Italy has done the kind of advertisement that we would be doing. And I think it comes also from the fact that he realized, particularly with the time, that at the beginning we were a simple B2B business. So we had to convince just the clinic owner
Mhm.
that our machine was a good investment. Unfortunately, or fortunately, there's pros and cons. The beauty culture has become so strong with new generations that even if we are a B2B company, we need to think and advertise like a B2C company,
Yes.
because the end client is so informed and so knowledgeable about what's out there that basically put us in this situation. If I look back, maybe even just 15 years ago, the average woman or man would walk into a clinic and require laser hair removal. As simple as
Mm-hmm.
that. They wouldn't care of where is the machine made and what's the
Right.
brand and so on. Now we have people walking into a clinic and requiring a specific brand. Otherwise, they're not going to get the treatment done. So the shift in the marketing has been like quite drastic. Like not only the clinic had to advertise for the treatments, but the manufacturer had to advertise to the public their treatment. So that also helped us because my father was already pretty much invested in advertisement and just came to good use.
Amazing. And I just wanted to ask as well, because I feel that this folds in really well to this question about how have you generated this success and what successes and keys to success have you found throughout your, tenure, but also what lessons have you learned along the way? What mistakes have you made as a business that have really led you to grow? That's always a really interesting question that I love to ask those that have found incredible success in the industry.
Personally, the main mistake that I've always made is to look too much towards what other companies are doing. Because if you limit yourself to copying what they're doing, then you're hardly going to stand out
Hmm.
unless you're lucky enough that you do something better than them, even though it's the exact same thing they're doing. So obviously, it's important to be inspired, to have an understanding of what's going on out there, what are your competitors doing. But then eventually you need to be creative. You need to you need to be a bit like Apple. Apple
Yeah.
never speaks about the competitors. They always they always think about themselves, about their products. They go their own way. They don't get affected too much from what's happening around them. So in a way, it was a similar philosophy that I learned from my father to begin with. Also, when things go wrong, I would say on a macroeconomical level, like people tend to justify their bad performances with that, which is true. That
Mm.
definitely had an impact. But then, as a result of that, since you justified yourself, you take a step back and you stop like being creative enough because okay, everyone is doing bad. It's not me. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just gonna pass, and then eventually things are gonna be better. So when we had different crises, the 2008 crisis, or anyways later ones, COVID and so on, every time I tried to bring up the macroeconomical factor to my father, he would get very irritated. He would say, "Stop it. We need to think about us. We don't need to think about what's going around us. If we're not if we're not performing, it means we're not doing something well because." Out of every crisis, there's still going to be companies that stood up, and we need to make sure that we're one of them. Okay, we acknowledge what's going on, but then raise a line and think of how you can do better. Imagine nothing wrong is going on. How can you improve anyways? So these are definitely the few things that I learned from him. Another very important thing from a business standpoint, it's learn how to buy. It's really important buying well. And
Yes.
because if you buy well, you allow yourself to have better margin on a product. And if
Hmm.
you have better margin, some of that margin is going to allow you to make mistakes. And it's important to make mistakes because you learn from them, you adapt your strategy. But then if you're not good at buying from your suppliers and the room for mistakes becomes very small, then the first couple of mistakes you make, you really risk to go twice. So that's another important that's another important lesson I definitely learned from him in the past years. Room for mistakes is important because mistakes are going to teach you the most.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that you've just given such great insights. I wanted to just, before we wrap up, ask you, is there any additional advice before I get into our last question that we ask to all of our new podcast guests on this podcast? But any additional advice that you would give to a beauty entrepreneur that is looking to build their empire? Any sort of parting words of wisdom before we wrap up this episode?
First of all, it's the first advice I would give is to be very methodical and do your homework. Try to understand exactly what you're buying. Don't be fooled by a great sales pitch and be satisfied with a little understanding of what you're buying just because perhaps the commercial terms are good and or they seem good, the branding is decent. I think it's despite as we said, now branding is very important because the public is very educated. Let's not forget quality, and I would say that should be always at the core of every decision. And then after comes the financials and so on. And then be creative, be as creative as possible, combine, experiment. And that was the key of success that I saw in my client. My most successful clients were successful, I would say, because of this level of creativity and experiment that they were doing with the technology. But that you can start to do only when you have a real good understanding of the technology. So if you take it just lightly, okay, people are just going to walk into my door because it's a relatively famous machine from a famous company, then you're going to be very limited in what you can achieve. I have clients in the UK. Our brand in the UK is definitely way behind our Italian brand. So we're definitely far away from some brands like Soprano or others that I could mention. But despite that, one of the most profitable clinics that I've ever met, and they blow out of the water even central London clinics. They work with machines that are unknown brand wise to their customers, hence us, and and yet they make and yet they make so much money. We're not unknown, obviously, but we're definitely not what we are in Italy. But
Mhm.
because this client is so precise and has such a attention to understanding the tech, and she's obsessed with training, she wants more and more training. So yeah, I would say it comes down to understanding and training with
Mhm.
machines that are extremely highly performing but not necessarily with the branding that everyone would expect to have. She's making way more money than the average cleaner with big brands. So if you do your homework and be a bit obsessive with training and understanding the tech, I would say it's really hard to not be successful, even though you might not be a marketing genius. Just for the word of mouth that your client will start to spread around because of the results that they achieve thanks to you. So I would say, yeah, branding is important, but a bit more focus on the quality nowadays would be beneficial for everyone.
Great advice all around. And I love that example as well, because it's just something I agree with so wholeheartedly that if you're really investing in delivering those world-class results and that world-class customer experience, that is what's going to drive the traffic through your door. That's what's going to drive that word of mouth, which we all know is really the key to success in this industry. So just to cap off the episode, I'm going to ask you a question that we ask to all of our new guests, which is a bit of a personal question, but it is, what does beauty mean to you personally?
Feeling good with yourself at the end of the
Hmm.
day. So I feel like everyone should have a different idea of beauty, and that's fine. That's nice, despite we try to all look up to the same people and standards. But eventually, everyone should find his idea of beauty that should, as an end result, just make them comfortable with themselves. That's for me. That's it. Beauty is well-being, and if you feel good with yourself, I think it's also beneficial from a lot of other points of view. It's mental health as well. So yeah, that would be my answer.
I love that. Thank you so much again, Brando, for joining us. I hope you will join us for another episode down the line. This was such a fantastic conversation, and we'll be sure to
Most definitely.
drop all the links to where to find you and Baldan Group in the caption. Thank you so much, listeners, and we will see you back next time for another episode of Glow and Tell. Thank you so much again, Brando, and see you soon.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Glow and Tell. Please subscribe, comment, and follow anywhere where you listen to podcasts. We'll see you next time.